Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Andrew met Claire at a cafe by chance when he knocked over his coffee cup after bumping into her table while looking for a place to sit. She smiled, easing the embarrassment he felt, and started talking with such natural charm that he forgot all about the spilled coffee. That casual encounter turned into the first of many. Soon enough, they were going out to dinner, laughing at silly things, discovering shared interests, and dreaming about their future together. Andrew fell in love not only with Claire's beauty but also with how she always seemed to have smart answers for everything, and how she saw life so lightly, as if she carried no burdens or regrets. Their relationship quickly became serious. They rented a small, cozy apartment and decorated every corner together, picking out second-hand furniture that held enormous value for them. They spent evenings cooking recipes they found online and weekends walking around the neighborhood, planning between conversations the day they'd start having kids. Claire spoke enthusiastically about becoming a mother, about wanting a house with a backyard for the kids to run around in, and how on Sundays everyone would sit together at the table for lunch. Andrew would smile, enchanted, believing that this future was truly within reach. As time went on, things progressed. Both got promotions at work, decided to buy a house, and insisted on choosing one where they could begin building the family they both wanted. Buying the house was a milestone. They painted the walls, set up an office so Andrew could work from home some days, planted a small vegetable garden in the back, and made plans to turn one of the bedrooms into a nursery when the time came. Friends saw them as the perfect couple, the kind who seemed to have successfully navigated every stage of life with harmony and ease. During the first years of marriage, the two lived in admirable balance. Claire was supportive, encouraged Andrew in every decision, surprised him with little thoughtful gestures like notes hidden in his car or breakfast in bed on mornings when he woke up tired. He reciprocated with flowers, dinners, and surprises, like the trip to the East Coast they took on their second anniversary, where they spent days exploring small towns and collecting memories that, at the time, seemed eternal. Talks about having children were frequent and full of excitement. Claire said that once they hit 3 years of marriage, they'd be ready. Andrew agreed, imagining what it would be like to hold a child in his arms, teach them to ride a bike, make pancakes on Sundays. He felt like life followed a perfect script, one that made anyone believe real love exists and can truly withstand time, challenges, and fears. But without him noticing, small signs began appearing, hidden among routines and the certainties they had built together. At that moment, Andrew still saw everything through loving eyes, fully trusting Claire and believing the love binding them was strong enough to keep everything just the same. If someone told him that their story would take another direction, he would laugh and refuse to believe it. After all, until then, every step they took together seemed to confirm they were meant for each other. The once subtle signs started intensifying in a way Andrew could no longer ignore. Claire's outings, which previously involved spending time together or meeting close friends, now happened alone and with people he didn't even know. She started working late more often, explaining it away with meetings and tight deadlines, but without giving much detail about what she was doing or who she was with. Andrew tried to understand. After all, they both had demanding careers, and he knew how competitive the corporate environment could be. But as months passed, her emotional distance became obvious, not just in her physical absences, but especially in empty conversations and increasingly long silences. Before, Claire used to call in the middle of the day just to hear his voice or tell him something random. Now, she barely replied to messages, and when she did, it was coldly and in a rush. Their dinners together decreased until they practically disappeared. When they were home, she preferred to isolate herself in the bedroom, often taking her laptop under the excuse of getting work done early while Andrew stayed alone in the living room, trying to convince himself this was just a rough phase that would soon pass. Weekends, which used to be the most anticipated moments for them, turned into commitments she had with friends or coworkers. Always a new excuse, a birthday, a gathering, a course. When Andrew suggested joining, Claire said they were unimportant events or that he'd probably get bored. Slowly, he realized he was being excluded from the life she was living outside the house, and he didn't even have space to be part of these new experiences. In one attempt to recover the bond that seemed to be slipping away, Andrew prepared a special dinner, cooked her favorite dish, played music they both liked, and waited. Claire arrived late, said she had already eaten, and went straight to the bedroom without even noticing the effort he had made. In that moment, something inside him broke, not just about a single ruined night, but the realization that this marriage was turning into a cold coexistence without affection or connection. Still, he tried again. He brought up the issue, asked if anything was wrong, if she was stressed or going through something difficult she could share with him. Claire always answered vaguely, saying everything was fine, that she was just exhausted from work, and that he should stop making problems where none existed. In some conversations, she flipped the script, claiming he was the one suffocating her and asking too much, as if the fault was always his. Faced with her refusal to talk openly, Andrew suggested couples therapy. He mentioned a therapist recommended by friends, talked about the good experiences others had, and how it could help improve communication between them. Claire laughed as if the idea were absurd and said they didn't need a stranger solving issues that, according to her, didn't even exist. This dismissal of his efforts was one of the most painful moments because Andrew realized he was fighting alone, while she didn't even try to understand the depth of the emptiness between them. Each rejection, each indifference, felt like added weight pressing down on him. Criticisms increased too. Claire, who used to be patient and understanding, became sharp, pointing out flaws and minimizing his feelings. Any attempt at closeness turned into arguments where she called him dramatic or insecure. The disconnection grew so deep that Andrew started avoiding certain conversations, afraid of further accusations or the humiliation of seeing the woman he loved react with such coldness. During this period, he began feeling displaced even inside his own house. Walking through rooms, he remembered how each had been designed by both of them, the nights they painted walls together, the debates over which sofa to choose, the laughter while assembling furniture. Now, that space felt strange, as if it had lost its soul. She was physically there, but absent, like a visitor who no longer belonged to the same story. Even in the face of all this, Andrew kept searching for explanations for her behavior. He thought maybe it was just too much work, perhaps a stressful phase, or a natural process couples go through after being together for some time. But deep down, something in his instincts told him there was something bigger, something he hadn't yet fully understood. That's when he started questioning not only Claire's behavior but the future of their relationship. He wondered whether it still made sense to invest in a relationship where there was no longer any reciprocity, whether he wasn't somehow losing himself trying to keep alive a love that, day by day, seemed more distant and indifferent. These questions came forcefully, especially during lonely moments when he realized that despite being married, he felt completely alone. Andrew started waking up every morning with the same feeling, that his life was frozen in a place that no longer made sense. He'd get up, make coffee, leave for work, and when he returned, he'd find Claire buried in her phone or computer, avoiding any exchange beyond practical daily matters. Even her tone of voice had changed, it was drier and more direct, as if speaking only out of obligation. He began realizing that even when they were in the same space, they seemed to live in completely different worlds. For weeks, Andrew clung to the idea that he could still reverse things, thinking maybe she was going through a personal crisis and that distancing herself was a form of protection, not rejection. But with every failed attempt at reconnecting, he lost a little more of the hope he had always held on to regarding marriage. Small initiatives, like preparing breakfast or suggesting a walk, were now met with disinterest or worse, disdain. The weight of this rejection piled up until he found himself emotionally drained, without strength to keep carrying the relationship alone. It was then that, on an ordinary night while washing dishes after dinner, without even sharing the meal with Claire, he looked at the ring on his left hand and felt like that object, which once symbolized a promise of eternal love, was now just a daily reminder of how alone he truly was. The idea of separation, once unthinkable, started gaining space in his mind almost naturally, as if it were the only possible way to preserve the little dignity he had left. In the following days, he reflected more on this possibility. He thought about what life would be like away from that house, away from her, and with every thought he realized that more than fear, he felt relief. The idea of starting over began to feel less scary and more freeing. So silently, he started preparing. He contacted a lawyer, looked for information about divorce proceedings, organized documents, and financially planned the move he knew he needed to make. Despite the pain he felt, Andrew chose not to confront Claire, not to turn this ending into a battle or a series of accusations that would only prolong the suffering. He wanted to leave calmly, knowing he had done everything he could to save the relationship, but that when he realized he was fighting alone, he had the courage to choose himself. After weeks of quietly organizing everything, he scheduled a conversation with Claire. She was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone when he approached and, with a firm voice, announced his decision. Claire, who until then seemed unaware of everything, reacted with surprise. She asked if he was serious, tried to understand why, but he calmly explained that he had been trying for a long time to recover the relationship without success and that he couldn't live like this anymore. She remained silent, unsure what to say, and he didn't push. He stood up, walked to the bedroom, grabbed the suitcase he had already packed, and left. At that moment, he didn't look back. He walked to the car and drove toward the new city where he had secured a job transfer, a place where he could restart his life without the ghosts of that relationship that had become only a bitter memory. The drive to the new city was long, but for the first time in months, Andrew felt a lightness he hardly remembered existed. When he parked in front of the new apartment, he took a deep breath, got out of the car, and without ceremony, started unloading his bags. There was no one waiting for him, no warm welcome, no hug. But there was also no indifference, no coldness, no distance. There was just him and the chance to build a new life, free from a marriage that, despite all attempts, couldn't survive without reciprocity. So Andrew began his new journey with a heart still marked by past wounds but with an open mind toward whatever the future might offer. Each day in that city was one more step toward the emotional freedom he had long sought, a quiet proof that he had the courage to break a cycle that no longer made him happy. In the first few months after the move, Andrew experienced a quiet process of rebuilding. He woke up each day and slowly created a new routine, free from the emotional chains that had suffocated him for so long. He learned to enjoy silence, which he used to associate with loneliness. He started frequenting new places, made friends with neighbors and co-workers, and without realizing it, began filling the gaps left by Claire's absence. On some nights, while walking around the streets near his new home, he thought about everything he had gone through, mentally revisiting conversations, remembering expressions, gestures, decisions. The feeling wasn't sadness anymore, it was learning. He understood that for a long time, he had insisted on staying in a relationship where reciprocity didn't exist, and that even though it was painful to admit, love, when lived alone, becomes a prison. Claire, upon realizing he had definitively left, tried reaching out again. She sent long messages, some filled with nostalgia, others with regret. She called multiple times, sent emails, and even wrote a handwritten letter saying she needed to see him, that she wanted to clarify things she never had the courage to say. Andrew read every word but decided not to respond. It wasn't pride or revenge, it was self-preservation. He knew any attempt at reconnecting could drag him back into the same exhausting cycle of pain. Then, she decided to come to the city where he was living. She showed up at his building unannounced, ringing the doorbell repeatedly. When he opened the door and saw her standing there holding the same confused expression she had shown so many times in the last months of their marriage, he felt a strange mix of surprise and certainty. Claire asked to come in, wanted to talk, but he stayed there, motionless, firm, and said there was nothing more to say. She cried, said she had made mistakes, that she pulled away out of fear, that love never really disappeared, but she only realized the seriousness of the situation when he left. Andrew listened in silence, not interrupting, not arguing. When she finished, he thanked her words and, with all the calmness he could gather, explained that now he needed to move forward, that he had understood, after much suffering, that he deserved a different life, one where love was shared, not begged for. Claire stood there, speechless, maybe expecting him to back down, to invite her in, to hug her or say there was still a chance. But he simply wished her happiness and closed the door. In the following days, Andrew remained firm. He didn't answer calls, didn't reply to messages, and eventually, Claire stopped pushing. What he didn't expect, and what he ended up discovering completely by accident, was what happened months later when he visited a friend in his old city. They were eating at a familiar restaurant when, casually, the friend mentioned Claire. He said she was dating a coworker and that the relationship started shortly after the divorce. Andrew stayed silent, but the friend, unaware of the impact of that information, kept talking. He said that actually, there were rumors she and that coworker had been seeing each other well before the divorce, that they were often seen at bars after work, and that in fact, some of her closest coworkers suspected the relationship already existed while Claire was still married. At that moment, Andrew felt a chill run through his body, but he didn't show it. He simply smiled slightly, finished his meal, and continued the evening normally. He didn't ask questions, didn't seek more details, not because he didn't want to know, but because at that exact moment, he understood something he had never quite accepted completely before. The reason Claire drifted away, lost interest, and became so cold had nothing to do with him, nor any personal failures he blamed himself for. She had simply already been living another story, maybe without the courage to admit it, maybe without wanting to take responsibility for putting a final end to things. Realizing this, Andrew didn't feel anger, nor the urge to confront her, nor the desire to throw any accusations in her face. What he felt was deep peace, a liberation he had long been seeking and had finally found. He returned to his new city with a lighter heart than ever before. He understood that sometimes you don't need all the answers to move forward, that time takes care of revealing what pain and illusion once prevented you from seeing. From that point on, he decided the past would be only a distant memory, a story that no longer defined who he was or who he wanted to be. Every step he took, every new project he started, every genuine smile he received from those around him confirmed that his decision to leave was the hardest, yet the most right choice of his life. And so, Andrew moved forward, carrying with him the lesson that self-love should always be greater than the fear of losing someone. Suspicious of your wife or daughter-in-law? Don't go through what we saw in the video. Check the link in the comments and get the ebook with valuable tips and investigator-approved sites to clear your doubts. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.